Hi, everyone. I'm KSN Storm Track 3 Chief Meteorologist Lisa Teachman, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Listen to Lisa. The meteorologist that I pulled in for this podcast, meteorologist Lucy Dahl. She's with me here. This is Sunday evening. We are waiting for the kickoff of the Cowboys and the Vikings game right here on KSN. But before we get to it, we want to talk a little bit about the way our weather has been and the way things are expecting to change again. Lucy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it's been a whiplash of a week, I think, in the simplest terms.
When it comes to our temperatures, most definitely, and we'll show you how much we have gone from one side of the spectrum to the other just in the month of December alone. But what a day it's been. This is not good for those of us who are Chiefs fans.
Yeah.
Mahomes getting an injury, and we're also not making it to the playoffs this year.
Chris Jones also had an injury, but he was back in the game, I think, by the end. But not a good.
Lots of injuries for the Chiefs for this season here. But
they always bounce back.
They always bounce back, that's for sure. We have another game on Christmas Day. They will be playing the Broncos, which the Broncos, last I saw, were in a dead heat with Green Bay. So
yes,
yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, everybody's in the heat right now in order to get to the playoffs and then to get on to the big game, which, by the way, the big game is going to be on KSN for this year.
It is?
It is.
I did not know that.
Yep. So stay tuned for that in February. Now, circling back around, we aired the KSN Storm Track 3 Winter Weather Outlook a few days ago on KSN. And if you have not had a chance to check it out, go to ksn.com and just type in, search for Winter Outlook, and you'll be able to find some of the thoughts that our team has, not only when it comes to the weather features that are currently in play that's enhancing at least the first half of winter, but also some of our snow predictions. And everybody had a different snow prediction. And as the saying goes, if you have all the same data, which those of us who are meteorologists have access to the same data, if you were to give this to 100 meteorologists, you would have 100 different forecasts.
Yeah.
And that's why when it came to our snow predictions, this is also the reason why we have such a spectrum from all of us. I went on the highest end at the end of winter. I think Wichita is going to have anywhere from 15 to maybe 17 inches of snow. You went a little bit lower.
I believe, if I remember correctly, I went 11 to 13 inches, which is straddling our average snowfall for this time of year. I just felt like since we were in a drier pattern to start winter off, we may not be able to recover. But you made some good points, Lisa, about why we could potentially see a lot more snowfall by the end of the season.
I'm a firm believer that when it comes to weather patterns, everything is cyclical and things come back around. So even though things are dry now, I think things are going to start to change on the back end of winter, which I explain in our Storm Track 3 Winter Weather Outlook. If you look at our weather pattern now, the winds that are driving our storm systems, it's known as northwesterly flow. You get the storm systems that move from the northwest down to the southeast. These are not typical ones that give us a lot of snow because you don't have the time to build up the moisture, for one. And number two, you're in such a progressive pattern that you keep getting one cold front after another that continues to bring in the chill. But also with Kansas being on the edge, that means we could flop back warmer, which we're going to see this week.
Just back and forth.
Back and forth. Temperatures today, Wichita not even making it to the freezing point. Temperatures stayed in the upper 20s, but we are going to make some great gains when it comes to the next 24 hours. And this is part of that northwesterly flow. This afternoon, we made it to 29 degrees. By Tuesday afternoon, we're looking at a high of 56. And then Wednesday, looks like it's going to be a little bit warmer before we have another cold front, Tuesday into Wednesday. And then next weekend, we have another cold front, but both of these systems look to come through dry.
And Lisa, that means that the METAR data for today, or today's official high, just came in just in the last couple of minutes, because that did update in that graphic. So we're getting closer towards that 29 degrees rather than the 28 we thought we were sitting at all day. So on this graphic for the month so far, I did have 28 for today because I wrote that in there before they updated it.
We're recording this at 5:30, and that's usually when the climatological report comes in, because sometimes you may have a late day high, which was expected because it's taken us a while for the temperatures to climb time after it was so cold this morning. And that's why they always send out the climatological report, and it can change by maybe 1, maybe even 2 degrees.
Yeah.
But we knew we were talking about the upper 20s when it came to that, which is still well below average for this time of year. 46 is our average high.
Yeah, for the month of December as a whole, Wichita's average is about 45, but for today's high average, about 46, like you said. So 28 versus 29, it's still cold, no matter how you look at it.
It is. And if you look back at the whole entire month of December, Lucy created this graphic. You will see that the red shaded numbers show us, on the warmer side, we're either at average or we're above average. The blue is going to be that looks more navy blue to me.
It is navy blue.
It's navy blue, so it'll trend on the cooler side, and then in the gray, it's going to be right on average, right where you would typically expect our temperatures to be. And this shows that every couple of days it gets colder, then it starts to warm up, then it gets colder once again, and we're going to see a little bit more of this pattern. But what's driving this right now? So we've had the Arctic, we've had a little bit of a push of Arctic air, but it's shallow. And anytime that you get a shallow push of colder air, it means that it could be easily moved. Colder air in itself is denser. It is heavier. And that's why when you get deeper into the winter season, you could lock in the colder air and then it's harder for it to move out. You have the lower sun angle. You don't have as much daylight. But in this case, we're right on the edge. So that's why we're going to be able to switch so quickly over the next 24 to 48 hours.
One of my favorite forecast tips I remember you telling me is that cold air in the winter is like molasses. It just sticks and it won't go anywhere. But since we are in that almost in between phase, that's why we're able to switch so quickly.
The winds have already switched around out of the south. The movement around an area of high pressure, and this high pressure center is now off to the east of us, comes in from more of the south. We still have enough of a wind to give us wind chills that range from the from the teens rather to the 20s. You give it a few more hours and we could be pushing some upper single digits right through the core of Kansas before our temperatures are going to hit a certain point that they're going to stabilize. They're not going to be able to bottom out and become absurdly cold. It's still cold enough, but the south winds are going to help us tonight, which you can already see taking root across the state.
So rather than being potentially in the teens for our actual air temperature overnight, we're more so going to sit in those 20s for majority of the region. I still think we could see a few teens, though, more north.
And we are going to have a bit of wind to contend with as well. We've had some of the strongest winds so far this afternoon in western Kansas. That was good news because it helped to mix out the low overcast that was hugging western Kansas earlier today. We can see that with our Skyview camera. I'll show you that here in just a bit when it comes to Garden City. But the strongest of the winds later tonight, the first half of Monday, are going to be from south central into eastern Kansas. We may have some gusts that are upwards of about 45 miles per hour. But it's not going to stick around all day for tomorrow because it's going to keep trending with that area of high pressure farther to the east. Whenever you get two weather features that are close together, they can get what's known as some stronger winds that will flow between them. It's known as a pressure gradient. And we've had that stronger pressure gradient in western Kansas today. Now it starts to push eastward and then it begins to relax.
Yeah, it's kind of like the battle zone between the two pressure systems where they're fighting over who's going to take control of that area. You get stuck in those winds for sure.
And then we'll also have a little bit more of a westerly component in some places. This is our Skyview camera in Garden City. One thing that we had earlier this weekend was freezing fog. And we even were able to precipitate out a few flurries too, which is another thing. Another Teachman.
Teachman tidbit.
Teachman tidbit.
Trademark.
Yes, Teachman tidbit. I have a general rule that if you are dropping your temperature by 10 degrees or more, the atmosphere is going to try to precipitate something out of it.
Even if it's just a light flurry, it's going to try, and that rule was proved correct yesterday. So.
All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at our visibility tracker. Western Kansas, watch out for some more freezing fog later tonight. Temperatures, of course, in the freezer tonight. You get just a little bit of moisture on some of the bridges and overpasses. It could cause some slick stuff. So watch out for this first thing tomorrow morning. I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem that we had this weekend, but it's still something to keep in mind. Then we're going to have another chance for some patchy fog going into Tuesday morning. This time looks like it's going to be more concentrated closer to Wichita, Medicine Lodge, over toward Hutchinson. You're pushing this warmer air in over over the colder ground. And that's what's going to help to enhance some of this fog. As for our temperatures for tonight, temperatures are going to be in the 20s. We have some places that will dip into the teens. Generally, the sky will clear, but western Kansas will have some patchy freezing fog. And then how beautiful will tomorrow be?
I'm excited.
When you talk about temperatures for an afternoon high, 28, 29 degrees, 29 the official high for Wichita, you add another 20 degrees, we're having a heat wave here.
I know, it's going to feel like summer almost for some of us.
And we'll even make it into the 60s in Elkhart. So this is what I mean whenever I say the colder air is shallow for one, and for two, Kansas is living on the edge. That was something else I mentioned in our winter weather outlook, is that we're going to be able to flop back and forth, and sometimes multiple times in 1 week. You cool down, then you can warm up. I think that is expected to continue as long as this northwesterly flow persists. The northwesterly flow will keep our snow chances down, but what I'm looking forward to is later in the season, we start to get more of those southern track storm systems that can latch onto a little bit more moisture. If you look at previous La Niñas that we've had within the last 5-6 years, all but one, we started to see the back end of winter that went from La Niña over to a neutral phase. And like last year, we started off little snowfall in the beginning, and then it really started to become more prevalent in the later months of winter.
Late January into February, if
That's
I remember
right.
correctly.
You already have the cold air that's in place. Now you just have to wait for the weather pattern to come in your favor. And I think that it will, just every 60 to as much as 90, maybe even 120 days.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind for us as we go forward here. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the rain probabilities for this week. It is not looking good for us, that's for sure. It is pitiful. That's a great way to describe it. This is going to be our winds that are picking up tonight that could give us gusts between 35 and 45 miles per hour. See how that pushes off to the east. Stronger winds will start to ramp up on Wednesday into Wednesday night. Anytime that the winds start to go up, you know that nature has something up its sleeves, and this is going to be the next cold front. But all the moisture is farther to the east of us. This is also in a La Nina pattern. You start to see more of this rainfall start to evolve along into the east of the Kansas-Missouri state line. Missouri benefits over toward Illinois with some rainfall. They may have some snow on the back end of this over towards South Dakota and Nebraska, but then that goes by. Temperatures will take a brief hit on Thursday, but then temperatures are expected to pick up again. And then there's this little piece of energy. This is another cold front next weekend, but I'm not holding out much hope for this moisture.
Yeah, that one's not looking that strong.
This is a lot to have to rely on this far out into the future, because as we say, anything beyond 48 hours, the accuracy really starts to drop off. And we're watching the trends, watching what's happening in the upper levels of the atmosphere and how things may change. But overall, it looks like it's going to be warm this week, and also warm leading right up to Christmas.
Yeah, which I don't mind a warm Christmas. I know a lot of people have been asking for a white Christmas this year. I don't think that.
I will never forget. It was when I worked in Kansas City. So working in Kansas City, there were a couple of different Christmases that I remember in particular. There was one Christmas, we had a squall line that came through Christmas morning.
What year was that?
Was it 2010, 2011?
That sounds
It was either
right.
2010 or 2011. We had a squall line that moved through right before dawn, so we had severe thunderstorm warnings. I happened to be off on that Christmas. But the Christmas morning blizzard of 2009, which I will never forget because it took me 2.5 hours to drive into work that morning.
Yeah.
And we started off on Christmas Eve first with rain. Then temperatures started to cool, got a little bit of freezing rain, some sleet, and then it became all snow. And it was some pretty heavy snow, that's for sure.
And I remember that year driving from my uncle's house. We always do Christmas Eve at my uncle's house, and then they all come over to our house for Christmas Day. It was right when that transition to freezing rain was happening. We had to leave early from his house, actually, rather than staying pretty late. And then the next day, my mom had enough food to feed our whole family, and it was just the four of us instead of all the cousins and uncles and everyone, because everyone got snowed in. I yeah, you taking 2 hours to get to work. I don't doubt it. That was not a fun day.
On a good day, I lived about 45 minutes away from the station because we lived in Olathe at the time, and the station that I worked at was located at 435. I'm saying 635 because 635 is in Baltimore, where I also worked. But 435 in Kansas City over towards 63rd Street.
On the Missouri side, right?
It was on the Missouri side. It was not too far away from the Truman Sports Complex where the Royals and also the Chiefs will play. We were just south of that. And I drove a 2004 Taurus. I had front-wheel drive. I'm glad that I had front-wheel drive.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
But also because of this, I realized, you know what? I need to get an SUV. I need to make sure that I get something that has four-wheel drive to it because of it taking 2.5 hours. And I was driving all by myself. And
it was for the morning show too, right?
It was for the morning show because Joel Nichols was off. Mm-hmm. He usually took off. He would take off every single Christmas. And so here it was me. And that morning they had to use a photojournalist to go and get Donna Pittman, who was anchoring that morning, from her house. And then had to get our reporter, Jana Corey, had to bring her in too.
In the station cars?
In the station cars. Mm-hmm. But me, I kept pushing it and kept pushing it. And here's where I knew that I was running into problems, okay? Now, I knew, number one, get up really early because you need to give yourself plenty of time to get to where you need to go. We tell people that all the time. The problem I ran into was here I pull out of the garage. I get down into the street, and I am stuck. I am stuck. Because of the way that our house was, there was a little bit of a hill, and enough snow had collected. I mean, the snow was coming down.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something the time that I headed out. As I was driving maybe 5 or 10 miles per hour on 179th Street, trying to go over to 69 Highway, it looked like I was in warp speed. It looked like I was, Star Trek, kind of a thing. And so I had to call my husband and I say, hey, can you come and give me a push?
Out of the driveway?
So he gets ready, and I'm sitting here in the middle of the road. There's nobody else on the road, being Christmas morning.
Plus, was it 1 a.m., 2 a.m.? How early?
This was probably at midnight.
At midnight.
Midnight or 1 a.m. at the latest. And I think I started driving at 11:45 at night, I'll be honest with you. So it must have been midnight. Yeah. So I tell my husband, could you put some clothes on? Could he come out and give me a push? And he gives me a push, and I'm just thinking, if this is what's happening to me when I get down the driveway, I still have a long ways to go before I get to the station. And so I said a prayer, and here I am on my way. I must have been driving on the wrong side of the road because you could not see any of the lines. Yeah. They were completely covered. I am so thankful that I had somebody that was on my shoulder that was monitoring me, that I didn't wind up in the ditch, for one. For two, I got stuck again. This time I was on the on-ramp on a 69 highway. And I was right in the middle of the on-ramp too. And I thought, this is it. This is where things are going to end. And I still have a long way to go to get into the station. And I keep working with the vehicle. Now, given I traveled in the D.C. area, Baltimore, West Virginia, I dealt a lot with snow travel up to this time in my career. And so I kept working with the car. I bottomed out. We probably had a good 6 or 8 inches of snow already on the ground at this time. And finally, I get it moving, and I get enough speed. I am on 69 highway, and the highway wasn't too bad. And so I was able to take it a little bit slow, but then I was able to get into the station. And then everybody else was coming in much, much later because, they had to get help. There was no way that they could come in from their own homes unless they had that 4x4 vehicle that the station had. So that was definitely quite the morning. And when you talk about your news schedules, weather schedules, which when you turn on KSN right now, from now until the end of the year and the beginning of next year, you're probably going to see different meteorologists in different places.
It'll be a little wonky.
Because we're using up our vacation time. We're spending time with the holidays, and we try to make it as fair as possible for the whole entire team. So that way everybody can get away and spend time with the family. But you're bare bones. You are bare bones at the station. And we were continuous from 4:30 in the morning until 9. And I think we might have maybe even stayed on air until 10 o'clock that morning. But the temperatures were right at the point that it was perfect. Some sunshine started coming out. The snow started to end. People were getting out. And I remember I went to fill up with gas because I burned a lot of gas that morning, being on the road as long as I was with having the heat full blast. And I remember one guy came up to me and he watched the news that morning and he said, I just want you to know that I'm thankful for what you do and the fact that you were there for us this morning. So.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you think about Christmas Eve, so many people go to midnight mass. And I remember them all being canceled that year specifically. And I remember my grandma calling in the morning saying her driveway was like completely snowed in ice.
Well, the ice was underneath, yeah.
And then
yeah.
it was like the 6 inches of snow on top. So thinking about you driving in that. And then we probably left my uncle's house to come home just when it was starting to turn from rain to freezing rain. And that was scary.
It was. And I remember there were a lot of accidents that were happening too,
Yes.
because I could see 179th Street from my house. And that was an area where Johnson County Sheriff's Department would take care of. And you could just see all the police officers that were helping different people. And I just thought, what am I going to be in for in the next morning? But at least we don't have to worry about a blizzard this year.
Nope.
This is a look at next week. This is going to be next Tuesday. You can see the southerly winds. Temperatures are going to be warmer next week. There's another front that moves through. Doesn't look like we have any moisture. Thursday evening, this is Christmas Day of next week. We are still maintaining more of that southerly flow. Snow in the mountains over toward Rockies, as you would expect, and a little bit of a light wintry mix over the upper Great Lakes region. I don't see any big travel troubles at all for the next 8 to 14 days. We're centered in the dry conditions, and we are also going to have temperatures that are above normal.
Yeah, a lot of our reporters and other people traveling home for the holidays have been texting me this week about their connecting flights and if I think it's going to be okay or not. And it's a waiting game. I mean, this far out, it's hard to say for sure, but I have been telling them it's trending warmer at least.
At least here.
Yeah.
But the problems that a lot of people will get into is, say, you want to go to Chicago,
That's
or
exactly where
you
I
want to
wanna
go to
be.
Florida, or you want to go to New York. You have other connecting flights that will come in from someplace else. Problems that we've had with the weather lately, the Great Lakes region picking up a lot of snowfall. My uncle texted me this morning in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, my Uncle Mike, and he's like, well, we were a little bit under what they were forecasting, but we still got 7 inches of snow. And so he sent me these really cool pictures, and I could tell where the temperature is because you could still see it's a little melty.
Yeah.
So he must be just under 32 degrees, but still warm enough that the sun,
melts in it.
daytime is helping to warm things up a little bit. But just to see it piled up on top of the car. And he says, this is making up for all the other previous years when we didn't have anything. And I said, yeah, we're the opposite of you. We're warm and we're dry, although today is really, really cold.
Yeah, the one chilly day that we'll have the rest of the week, probably.
Another place that you might have some issues when it comes to traveling next week will be the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
They have been getting inundated with a ton of rainfall. And then, of course, you get into the mountains, temperatures cool, and then you start to see more snow. But again, this is behaving in that La Nina pattern. When we say La Nina, this is a worldwide phenomenon. You can basically tell where you're going to have the wet zones. You can tell where you're going to have the snowy zones, where you're going to have more of the warmth and you're going to have more of the cooler air, all based upon this weather feature. And this is a classic La Nina setup that we're having. The Pacific Northwest being wet. We're having the snow. We're having all of the moisture in the Great Lakes region. Indiana having an incredible snowy season so far. And even St. Louis, too, when it comes to snow.
I have a lot of friends who are meteorologists in Missouri, and we've in our text chat, it's like, sending it your way, guys, enjoy. And then them being upset that we're nice and dry here, and they're dealing with snow, lots of snow. And the cold out that way, too.
We would love to get some moisture because another part of the winter weather outlook that I mentioned is I'm concerned about the drought starting to creep back. We still have a pretty good drought that's ongoing, that's continued to deepen up in eastern Kansas. I mean, it is just borderline right along our eastern counties, but I have a feeling that that's going to start to creep back in.
And then I know that the snow is usually pretty good for the winter wheat product
Yes,
or
it
crop
is.
that comes through. I'm not sure when they plant that, but I know that the snowpack being on the ground helps the winter wheat a lot. So hopefully we'll get that in by the time it's needed.
When it comes to the winter time and you've already planted your winter wheat, you don't want rain to just come in. You want to have that nice little blanket of snow on top of it, so that way it can melt and it can slowly work into the ground. That's what you want.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can have something like that, but only it's going to happen later in the season. It's not going to happen on the first half of the season for sure. We have to watch out for a pattern change in January and February. That's what I'm holding out for, because we've already been in this drier cycle. We started to get into this drier cycle at the beginning of October.
Yeah.
So October was dry. November was dry. So if you're looking at this every 60 to 90 days, we could be coming up to a pattern shift. And I know a lot of the long-range models like the GFS keeps wanting to do the trough in the west, keeps wanting to do it.
So hard.
It tries so hard, but then it just goes back into northwesterly flow.
Yeah, it just gives up on it after a couple runs. And with the pattern change that you're talking about too, this summer was a pretty nice. We got a lot of rainfall over the spring and summer, so it makes sense that after this drier pattern, we're going to enter back in to that wet pattern.
It's as farmers will tell you, the rain, the moisture, it will come. But it's not coming this week.
Nope.
Next 7 days for Wichita, South Central Kansas, mostly sunny, partly cloudy. There may be some days when we have a few more clouds compared to others. In this northwesterly flow, the clouds, are relatively thin, middle, upper levels of the atmosphere, unlike yesterday. Yesterday, we had cold air stratus. I'm on a microphone, so I'm not going to tell you what that's called, because there's another name that Dave Freeman used to call that. I'll tell you what it is after we wrap up with this. And if you want to know, give me a call and I'll tell you. But the colder air helped to enhance that stratus, and it did not want to break up.
No, it didn't.
Looking at the next 7 days, 49 on Monday. That's better than the 29 we had today. 50s for Tuesday, Wednesday, mid to upper 50s. We get another reset because of the cold front Thursday to 50. Then we're back up to 60 on Saturday. Another cold front moves through. We're going to drop back to the lower 50s. But 45, 46 is our average high now for this time of year. And overnight lows, those are also going to be all over the place, but at least we're not looking at overnight lows in the teens.
No, overnight lows for the next week looks like it's going to be at or warmer than our high today, which I always think is fun to look at. It's not going to get as cold at all, as cold as it is today.
It is always amazing how that kind of works out like that. It always puts everything in the perspective, because where we've been compared to where we are going to go, we're definitely going into a much better direction when it comes to the warmth. And if you still have some holiday shopping that you need to do, this is the week to do it. There are no more excuses. Just watch out for some of the long lines, because others are probably going to have the same idea as you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Listen to Lisa. Lucy, great to have you along for the weather chat for today. And I think you're going to be here next weekend as well. So
I should be, I think.
You should be. But we're going to be kind of all over the place here for the next couple of weeks, just because we're all taking turns and spending time with our own families. And we hope that you get to do the same. Happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas. I think we're going to have one more podcast before Christmas officially gets here, so that way we can keep you informed, because as we get closer, we'll be able to fine-tune all the forecast details for you. Make sure you stay connected with us on air and online at ksn.com. Everybody, have a great one. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy.